right now, and I will share my my options with you, my gaming options. So, hello everybody. I'm just it's something that happens when you stream with other YouTubers is that you kind of start a good conversation before the stream actually starts. And then you're like, we might as well just start the stream. So right now I'm trying to figure out what game I'm going to play after this. And I think People Playground looks good. Have you ever played that?
No,
You
never,
basically
never.
just get to torture avatars. It's like a physics thing.
Okay.
Tropico 6, I have that now from the Humble Bundle. Uh, these are just like my Steam games, which are generally not huge commitments for me. Like if I play a game that's like something that I spend a lot of time on, it's usually actually on Xbox because I just like being away from the computer, not at the studio. I like being upstairs on a couch, I suppose. So
Yeah, same here. I just want to feel like I'm actually immersing myself in the game that I'm playing. Yeah, and
right,
that's
yeah.
why I stopped like playing on PC. Plus, it was cheaper just buying an Xbox instead of trying to upgrade a PC all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I actually don't even care about the new Xbox either. I can't be bothered. I'm just
Me
like,
neither.
whatever. Yeah. Okay, so I think our stream is running. I can see our chat. Yep. There's a bit of
Mm,
an echo. Uh,
I'll bring
oh,
that
that's
up.
on your end, I think.
I like seeing comments and the yeah.
Okay, cool.
There we go. Hey everyone.
Yeah. How's it going, everybody? Um, yeah, there is a little bit of an echo. Is it? I wonder if are your headphones super loud, maybe, or are
I'll
they?
just pull them down.
Let's see if that helps at all. All right.
Does that help?
Yeah, now we're good. And I don't know what
Good.
it's doing. I think it's like auto adjusting my volume because I feel like whenever I turn that off, then it's just I constantly look at the chat and it's always telling me like, "You're too loud, you're too soft, you're too," and I just end up being like, "All
Yeah,
right,"
yeah, I know what you mean.
on the entire stream doing this. All right, everybody. So, how do you pronounce your name?
Jakob. Jakob
Jakob.
Hack.
Okay, Jakob Hack. Do people just call you like Jacob Hack all the time?
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. I mean, if you watch my videos, you'll see me say Jakob Hack at the beginning of the video, and then when I keep talking, I'm so into the English,
Sure.
so I start saying Jacob
Right.
instead. And then Tim Webb from Discord, which is my most favorite site when it comes to iOS music and in news. He always keeps asking me, he keeps teasing me like, when are you gonna decide what your name is?
Yeah.
I just can't help it.
Yeah. So I guess as I say with every stream, my streams are generally brought by like my stream. The reason I do these streams is part of my little Patreon agreement. But all of my patrons were like, you should make the streams free and public for everyone. And so I always thank my patrons for being cool. However, after this stream, I have noticed that I've just not been paying attention to my own Discord server as much as I should, just because this week's been hectic. And I'm going to do another stream. I'll post the link to it on my Patreon, and I may play a game. I'm not sure what I'll do. I basically, though, I just want to talk to my patrons and answer questions that I've probably been annoyingly not seeing in the other streams just because I'm talking to a guest or playing with a module or doing something else. So anyway, you work with mostly portable audio, don't you?
Oh yes, I do, and I use iDevices for everything. So iPhones and iPads, and that involves everything. So whether I'm recording or editing narration, or if I'm editing pictures or doing some graphics or animations or making videos, it all happens on an iDevice. So I definitely know all the ins and outs, and I viewed your video. I saw your video on that and your recommendations, and if I have any of my viewers here, a lot of them already know that I already agree with you on almost every point, actually, because you seem to know exactly how cumbersome this platform can be just when it comes to connecting stuff up to it and having that be stable.
Yeah, it's hard to insult someone's operating system without getting a visceral reaction, especially on YouTube or the internet or something like that. And it's also hard for me. I do grumble about Apple stuff all the time. I'm very bitchy about Apple stuff, and I sort of what we talked about before we went live. If you come from like a Windows environment where you constantly have access to your C drive and your D drive and your F drive and everything else, and then all of
I
a sudden,
miss that.
yeah, and all of a sudden, you're left in this environment where you don't get to see where your files are stored necessarily. And there's also, of course, a huge monetary push for your files to be stored on a subscription service like iCloud. Uh, yeah, I mean, it gets. I think it's like one thing if you're playing around with it, if you're taking pictures and enjoying yourself. I think it's a complete different thing when it's in your creative process, because you know how it is. Like it's almost as if when you're writing a song or something, and if somebody like knocks on your door, you're done.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it takes you so long to get back into it, and
yeah. That
I
can
feel like
ruin an entire day.
those little like iOS things for me, because I'm not used to them. Those little hiccups, I guess, or whatever, they're just like little roadblocks, but they ruin your creative flow. And I'm just like, and then I end up just doing something else or using some different thing. However, I will say that the other night I was sitting at my kitchen table with this iPad Pro using AUM. Oh my god, do I have it wrong? AUV?
AUM is
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
absolutely correct.
Yeah, I was using AUM, and I was just like using a looper and like a bunch of different stuff, and I was actually very happy with the process. I was like, I like what I'm hearing. This is great. And
When you say looper, what do you remember? What app it
I
was?
think I was using Gauss,
Oh
the
yeah, of
inbox.
course, by Heinbach and
Mhm.
Brambos.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a very good plugin. I absolutely love it. I produced like several small beats, and I intend to make something longer with them just as soon as I had it down on my iPad. It's just the sound of the thing is just great, and it really behaves. You know, I'm a sucker for everything. Tape,
Hmm.
vinyl, stuff like that,
Yeah.
and they've done a really good job with it, don't
Yeah.
haven't they?
By the way, I see Simon the Magpie in the chat. Are you friends with him? Do you
Oh,
know him? Are you?
with Simon, that's how we
Yeah.
pronounce it in
Simon. Okay.
Swedish. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's a friend of mine. He's an absolute. He's a crazy dude.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen any of his videos?
Oh yeah. What's funny is I've been on his stream before. Simon, I want to have you on this show stream, whatever, in the coming weeks, and I believe that we have something going on soon. I don't know if it's announced yet, but I know that we have some other plans too, with some Discord messages that I haven't been able to respond to yet. But yeah, last year at NAM, I saw Simon, and I'd already spoken to him on a stream, and I talked to him quite a bit, and I took a selfie with him without him seeing me, and then somehow in the craziness of everything, we just ended up not being able to actually meet up, and I felt like such a dick because I like took this selfie with him and then never met up with him, and I was just like, I'm such a turd. Like, why would I do that to him?
But did you
Um,
post it? Because that would have been fun though.
I think I
Him
did.
just seeing
Yeah,
a random selfie with you and like,
yeah.
who is this dude?
Yeah, I think I put it on Instagram. No, I mean, I think he recognized me, but he was like, we were trying to meet up, and we were actively trying to meet up, and like, then he was like, all right, well, just come to my hotel room, and I was already on the other side of LA at that point, and I was just like, oh man, what a dick! Like, why didn't I just talk to him when I was taking that selfie instead of being like, oh, I'll run into him 100 more times? So, yeah.
If you ever get to meet up with Simon, he's insane in all the best ways and very very creative. I think you'd have a lot of fun talking to him.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's a super nice guy. I love him. It's funny because before COVID, we were talking about. I mean, I've talked about this with quite a few creators about having some sort of creator camp here in Georgia that, like, essentially companies would sponsor it, or companies would help fund it, because and essentially it'd be like a NAM for just YouTubers in a nice cabin in the mountains. We're sort of thinking about that, but now I'm sort of thinking about also I'm doing like studio residencies here soon, and I'm also thinking about the possibility of, like, once COVID is over with, or once it's safer, about like a summer camp of doing some like creator camps and things like that. Yeah, I feel like those are really. But anyway, I'm going way off of course with iOS here. um,
No, it sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds like a fun place. I mean, when I was down in Treppendorf with Simon and all the other YouTubers when we met up, it was one of the best experiences of my life because
Yeah.
you're basically hanging out with a bunch of freaks.
Yeah.
I mean that like in the best,
Sure.
nicest ways because I'm
Yeah.
a freak myself. Uh,
We're people
so
who talk to ourselves or who speak to a camera by ourselves for hours on end. So yeah,
yeah, and we hang out with machines mostly, and they're
yeah,
our best friends. So yeah, we are freaks, definitely. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people in the audience that might recognize themselves in that. By the way, hello to the audience, and thank you so much for showing up.
yeah, yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming in. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I scheduled this. I feel like this is the perfect time because I didn't want to. Molten Music was doing his interview with the snooker guy who's into modular. I don't know who he is, just because I'm American and nobody knows what snooker is here, really. Um, then, yeah, and then Noir has his stream at midnight
Ah,
Eastern time, and so Thursday's like a busy stream day. I need to like a different day, but yeah. Anyway, oh yeah. So how often do you see Simon? Do you guys? I
no,
feel
not that often, because that's a problem with YouTubers, right? We
yeah.
are always talking to a camera. How often do we actually meet people unless we have a job that, or vlogging channel or anything else where you actually go out and meet people? And
Sure.
right now, the state of the world, even if I did have an occupation like that, I've chosen to do this YouTube thing because I get to do what I love to do for people who love to watch that stuff,
Mhm.
and I get to stay away from people mostly.
It's funny.
uh,
Richard Devine lives about. I've known Richard Devine. Are you familiar with him? He's the artist and synth guy.
yeah, I've never talked to
Yeah,
him or anything like that. Yeah, but
yeah. So
yeah,
I mean,
I know who he is.
I've been close friends with him for 20 years now, and he lives about 15 minutes away. And like, I'm part of the reason I moved to Georgia from Chicago was because Richie's here, and I was like, well, one of my best friends is down here, so that's a good link to have. And it's funny because I see him like twice a year tops, like,
Uh,
and we just live like right down the road. But yeah, we're both just in our own world so much that, um, and COVID doesn't help. But I don't know. I got my vaccine yesterday. That was got my first dose of the vaccine. That's exciting. Um, I can report that I kind of feel like crap today. My immune system's working. Like my immune system's definitely creating the spike proteins and doing all the things it needs to be doing because I feel like yeah, I just feel achy and cruddy. So that
yeah, that will pass. So just take it easy. I've heard some people that feel really really crap afterwards, and some people that didn't feel much. And
today
so
was the first day I ever woke up where I was like, man, I just feel like crap. Thank God. Like I was just like, I feel like crap. This is great. I would be so worried if I just felt fine. Like I would be like, oh, come on, immune system, do something. But yeah, so yeah, I guess that's good. On my way to the summer camp, I saw some. Yeah, I see a comment up there about hosting something at Georgia Tech or Morehouse about the summer camp. I'd like to hear more about that. Please hit me up. Uh, but yeah, if you have some sort of resources to host something like that, I don't know why I'm just like on this whole music education binge lately, but I'm loving sharing the expertise. I think it's the Patreon and the YouTube and all that stuff. And this year, just sort of not touring has kind of made me a lot more, yeah, open to those things. So, I guess to start off, what kind of iPad do you have?
well, right now the latest iPad I have is a 2018 year model, and
Okay.
I basically chose between saving up to buy the new one or get an older one for the same price of a new one but with double the amount of storage space. So I
Mhm.
always have to consider money, and in this case I was smart enough to stock an auction site for ages, months and months and months. And I had this auction site app tell me as soon as someone put up a new ad with the word iPad Pro in it,
Oh,
with
okay.
the sentence iPad Pro.
Yeah.
So every time it said ding, or pling or whatever in the app, I just went in there and looked until I saw one that said iPad Pro 11-inch 2018, almost new, 6 months still warranty on it, for what would be the equivalent for $500.
Hmm.
So I just got it.
Yeah.
right then and there, because that's the best price I
Yeah.
would
That's
have been
incredible.
able to get. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just got it. So that's the latest model I sit
Okay.
with, and I love it and I hate it. And the model I was using before that was an iPad Pro from 2015, the first gen iPad Pro 12.9 inch, the really big one, the 13-inch one. It's kind of,
Okay.
the screen is almost exactly the same size as a MacBook Pro, like 13-inch, you know.
Yeah.
And that one served me really well. But I could feel how it was slowing me down when I was editing videos, and also when I was doing AUM sessions. I couldn't load the amounts of synths that I saw that others did, and the amounts of effects. And when I wanted to perform, I had to break up my performances on several iPads sometimes just to get stuff going. You know, one app
Right.
here equals one app less here, and yeah, so I got that going. Now I can pretty much do everything I wanted on this one iPad.
The one that you're using, it's a USB-C.
Yeah, it
Okay.
is. So it's
Yep.
got that new thing. And that also meant that I had to get a new bag of stupid dongles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can't tell you how much I hate the fact that Apple did something, okay? I get it. They want everything to be better. They want
Yeah.
higher quality everything. So they hard set the sampling rate to 48 kilohertz. And so when you're opening apps that are set to one rate and you're switching between them, they keep crashing. I keep having to unplug this stupid USB hub and then plugging it back in, just to have my
Yeah.
headphones connected to it. And it's horrible. So everything that I gain in the time, I can now do stuff faster because the processor is faster. I have more space, the same amount of RAM, but it's faster. I'm losing in
Right.
connection errors. Like, I'm
Interesting.
serious. I'm
Well,
losing so much time.
this is interesting because I have, it's such a mystery to figure out what the problems are, and the answer always seems to be to buy something else. Like
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of like the old. There's nothing new with that being. I mean, I used to have like an iMac and stuff, and it was still back then too. It was like the answer with a PC issue is time. Like now you're gonna have to spend some time to fix that, and or a Linux issue. And the answer with like any Apple thing is like, no, you're gonna have to go to the store now. you have to, you
Yeah,
have to buy
yeah.
another thing. Yeah,
Yeah, but here with iOS, it can be so unpredictable
yeah,
because with Lightning and USB-C, you have to consider milliamps
yeah.
power output always, because you do not have a full USB system. You do not have half an amp to work with as you do with any port on any computer.
Yeah.
You have the maximum of 320 milliamps to work with. That's a bit over half of it, and that's with one of the connectors, one of the Lightning connectors. The other one gives you 280
Hmm.
milliamps. I've tested this, I've shown this in my videos how it works. And if you plug anything that just pops over that, or when it initializes or starts up, if it has lots of lights, like a launch pad or anything, it lights up, it will pull enough to shut it down. That doesn't mean you can't run it. You have to make sure it started before you connect it, so it
Oh,
doesn't initialize and just go over that limit. And it's the same with USB-C. It's confusing, but it's not when you know how Lightning
yeah.
worked and when you realize that USB-C still is not a 500 milliamp output. It's so
I need
frustrating.
like a poster, like a step by step, like first plug.
So what you do now is now you get a powered USB hub. Everything's fine, right? No, it's not fine, because it turns out that during a stream, I had this weird thing happening with a Novation audio hub, 2x4 that I have. I have that one because they don't make it anymore, so people
Okay.
don't ask for it. But it's a great device to have if you could get it, because it has USB ports built into it. It's an audio interface. It only has RCA input, so it's in that way it's kind of shitty, but
Yeah.
it's lovely because you can connect audio, and now you don't need a USB hub because it's powered by that thing, and you just plug in your MIDI into that, your USB MIDI into that.
Hmm.
The problem was that I thought that it was broken, but it turns out that I was opening two apps, and those two specific apps had this thing in them that they didn't know what to do with sound cards that had more than two inputs and two outputs. So if it had four outputs, it would crash. That's what happened. So when I contacted the app developer for one of them and said that, because I heard it from the first one, they fixed it and suddenly everything was working. And this was impossible for me to really know because it
Yeah.
wasn't working. Just because I was trying with those two apps specifically, I thought, okay, it's not working with this app. Let me try another one. And it turns out that that had the same problem. You see what
Hmm.
I mean? And
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's so hard to bug fix.
It's very mysterious. Um, one, it's funny. I could have sworn that I had a hub down here. I have a couple different hubs because I just you go on like purchase sprees to try and find something that works. But one, let me grab it over here. This is the Zengo, which is an Antelope Audio audio interface. Antelope Audio has amazing clocks. It's like up in the upper tier of preamps. And they've made one that costs $500 now. So it's like a portable thing. The funny thing is that I've like run this on Windows a few times and run some tests, but let me see if I actually have a cable to see if it actually reads because this will be like, oh, I do. It came with one. Yeah, if this thing works with an iPad Pro with the USB iPad, it'll be like the interface. It'll be like the it'll be the one that I would recommend to everybody because an Antelope interface for $500 is mind blowing. I don't know how they're getting this.
Is that thing USB class compliant?
So it is, but unfortunately, didn't Apple drop their class compliance program with USB-C? So I think that's why we have so many. Like I think they dropped their. I forgot the name of the program already.
The MFI certification. That's
Yes.
what they dropped.
Oh, okay.
But if your stuff is USB class compliant, it should work.
Okay.
Technically. And if it's not working, did you try with a powered hub in between?
Right. Yeah. So this, I don't know how detailed it is for the viewers. You actually have a USB-C power port over here, and then you actually have a USB-C. I mean, it can be powered by USB-C straight from the device, but if you need that extra power, you can actually run dual ports. And then it has XLR/quarter-inch inputs, and then quarter-inch outputs or RCA, and then SPDIF as well, and 2 headphone ports. I'm really excited about it just because I think that there's this huge gap in pro audio where people either have like their Focusrites or they have their RMEs. It's like your audio interface is either like there's nothing in the $500 range that is an actual solid audio interface with a good clock and with a good driver and with a solid driver that's constantly being updated. Like I don't know how old my RME is, but I think I have a Maddie face, and I bought that. I was still in Chicago, so I mean, I bought it a very long time ago, and there's still driver updates constantly, and the latency just keeps getting better with time, and But this is one of those companies, and so that's why I'm pretty excited. So if this thing works with an iPad Pro, without having to do too much, that's going to be really exciting. Oh, by the way, I didn't even mention, you could also run a ton of effects and stuff inside the unit, like compressors and amp simulators and things like that. So that's really also exciting for recording and all that stuff. So
yeah, I've been looking into getting some new interface for myself too because I've been buying like really like affordable one because with myself and for my audience, that's the kind of price range we are in. A lot of us, some of us aren't, but a lot of us are. So what I am looking for now is something better, and I've been looking at everything. And one thing I do look for is something that has internal FX or something like that with some good algorithm, especially reverbs. Being able to set up a send reverb without taxing anything else, because reverbs that are good are usually heavy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know that from taxing my own iPads when I use the best ones that we have. It's just horrible as soon as you get many in there, and I'd usually like using more than just 2 reverbs whenever I do something. But for a long time, I've had to deal with that. I have just limited myself to using two reverbs. So I set up one big wet and then one shorter, more roomy one, you
And
know?
you just run the sends into there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And I just run that. And if I need any other reverb, you know, back in the days, what did you do when you ran out of memory? Well, you just bounced stuff and then unloaded everything.
Yeah.
I've always had that, you know, with me. So for me, it was never a problem to really do that again. It just felt a little bit weird, you know, being in the 2020s and working as if I'm in the 1990s. It's
Yeah.
just, you see what I mean?
Right.
It,
Yeah.
it felt a bit weird, but I think for me, a really big driver for me has been that I keep solving problems. You see what I mean? Like
Hmm.
for me, if I can't solve problems at the same time, I'm not being creative for me. And
Yeah.
so my creativity has been spurred on about all the problems. I need to find a new way to do this thing that I used to be able to do back on the old big system, water cooled and everything, you know, with DSP
Yeah.
boards and Jesus. I had so much, and it, just having a problem to solve makes my brain work. And suddenly I get creative. I try out something new. I try out a new app, and then it forces me to go another route. And suddenly I'm out of my comfort zone, and I find something there. Because that's the thing with me. I'm scared of everything. Okay, I'm terrified of people and new places and everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrified. And the same goes for my own creativity. But in choosing this that I knew nothing about, going from PC and Microsoft to Apple, that it was
Yeah.
a scary move because suddenly, like you said, I can't see my where's my files? Where are they stored? Why can't I see them? What's going on here? What are these pop-ups? Why do they keep coming every fifth minute?
Yeah.
What is going on? Yeah. So going out of your comfort zone is important, especially if anyone out there is feeling like they're stagnating and they're doing the same beat over and over again. Try going out of your comfort zone. Try doing something completely new. Use
Yeah.
something you hate.
I think an interesting sort of lead into that too is that there's uh, typically when we do changes, whether it be in a creative process or a life process, it's always caused by stress, isn't it? Like, so, you know, the
Mm.
reason you would change your audio interface would be because the other one melted down or broke or it wasn't compatible with something, or maybe the reason you might change your entire operating system is because your computer died or got stolen. You know, the reason you might meet the love of your life is because somebody dumped you previously, or the, you know, you find a career because you got fired. It's a pretty it's a good thing to think about whenever you're in distress, to be like, well, every time I've ever been in distress before, it's led me up in some way. It's, you know, I've been wiser to make my next move. And yeah, that totally exists in studio stuff, which is one of the reasons why I'm so interested to talk to you, is because a problem that I have is that I have too much shit. Like, I have too much shit in general, but I also have too much shit creatively. I have the problem where I have more gear than I would ever hope to use. And it's not because I'm rich, it's because I run a YouTube channel and I've collected gear for ages. Um and so I'm really fascinated when other musicians can just make music, especially like make music on a flight. Like, that's nuts. It's crazy to me, you know? Um yeah, like I have an upright piano next to me over here, and I have a modular on the other side, and I have a guitar room upstairs, and it's just like I really want to not need all this crap to feel like I can be creative to my potential. And my past albums have like full orchestras and things like that, and so they're, but yeah, I do feel like I want to move to where music is more accessible. Uh, kind
So what is it that you need mostly? Like, what do you play mostly? What do you grab mostly when you're in the studio? What
yeah,
do you do?
guitar or piano usually. That's usually where
Ki-
like my writing process begins. But when I say piano, sometimes it's my MIDI keyboard right here in front of me. Uh, I do feel that maybe because I am so instrument driven that I'm not sure. Like, I would have a lot of trouble permanently moving to like a 2 octave keyboard or something like that. Like, I need a minimum of like, you know, 76 keys or 61 keys, maybe. You can get away with 61 keys. But I already feel, even with 61, I'm like, I can't hit the lowest note or the highest note if I'm doing like some sort of crazy inversion. Uh,
I kind of get that, and what you're saying about being someone instrumentalist. Can you say that? I think everyone understands what I mean. Someone who uses instruments,
yeah,
conventional instruments, because for me this is an instrument. When I load
yeah,
up TC11, it is nothing but an instrument.
hmm
And for people who have been playing instruments, conventional ones like guitar, drums, and stuff like that, I can totally get how it is hard to get over into this. So what you need to do in that case, like, yeah, you want to be able to do everything you do normally on here. I would tell you that you could, but it wouldn't feel as good. It would never feel as good. So
yeah,
maybe what you should do is look for a type of music you like making on something like this, and then maybe the
yeah.
other things can be moved into that. So you
That's
can
really
always
interesting.
start your ideas there, but you will always finish them off with what you're most comfortable with.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
So there is a game called The Descenders, which is a stupid mountain biking game with procedural down. I'm sure somebody in the chat will know it, and it's
is this
free.
like a rage game or something?
No, it's free on Xbox Game Pass, and it's just a mountain bike game where you just have to like complete these courses. And the
I'll,
only
I'll
reason,
check it out after the stream.
yeah, the only reason I downloaded it was because I, recently in the past couple months have been mountain biking, gotten into mountain biking a lot, and so naturally I was like, oh, a mountain bike game, I'll play that. And then I kind of got addicted to it, and it's a dumb, like I said, it's not, it's a very quick game that you could play for like 20 minutes and move on, but it has really good drum and bass in it. Like
Ah,
the soundtrack. And so I found myself like, I'll play that game, and then if I like sit down to eat or something on my kitchen table right now, I have like an Akai Force, and I just like, and I'll sit down and I'll make like drum and bass because I'm like inspired by the game music. And yeah, that is kind of interesting how for some reason I don't want to come down here and make drum and bass, but like with a portable interface, it just seems more fun and appropriate for some
I,
reason.
I understand. I understand what you mean. I mean, when I was younger, I used to play with bands, and I'm a shitty instrumentalist, if you can say that. I don't play that well. I've been
Mhm.
playing some guitar like on and off my whole life. I still have a guitar here, and also with keyboards, and I don't have any patience to learn it because for me it's boring.
Yeah.
I love synthesizers. You can, it's simple. I'm simplistic. I have a simple little monkey brain. So I put down one finger or I latch it, and then I can do whatever I want for hours and hours until I get that right sound. I love
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like you should do that with a piano. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I mean, maybe some people do. I would love to hear about those people. So if anyone knows about people like that, please contact me. Um, but I completely get it. But like you said, you sat down and you made drum and bass on this portable thing.
hmm
There are certain types of music that I make just because I pick up an app, and I wouldn't make that with my older regular studio that I had with the weighted keyboards and all of that stuff.
Right.
So I get it. It's the platform, the environment you put yourself in, and when you're using an OS, it is an environment. You're in there.
Yeah.
The change of environment will change the way you think
hmm
about doing stuff, and right.
Well, I suppose that's what that's a big thing with modular too, is I noticed that a lot of people use their modular as like they'll make an entire track on their modular, and I noticed that for me, it's more of like the idea generator, and then I'll end up bringing that idea into a DAW or something. But it's because I have such a wildly different interface that I feel like that's what is. Because I was just thinking when I was last week's stream, was it last week? I did a modular thing, and I was thinking to myself, like, do I need this? Like, is this something that I actually need to be a creative musician? Like, could I do all this in VCV Rack and get the same, or Me Rack on iPad, or Drambo or whatever? Uh, yeah, and I guess I was just sort of evaluating how much I needed or like it, and also like I've recently got a Polybrute, which is the opposite of portable. It's like a 70-pound massive polysynth, and I love it. It's like it's honestly my favorite synthesizer right now. And I just, because I think playing with that and then going to the modular, I was like, do I really need this modular? Do I? But yeah, I don't know. So I mean, I'll have it for now, but I'm not sure if I would move with it. If I were to like move from Georgia to somewhere else, I might. Yeah.
I mean, it's often I get this question on my channel that whenever I show something new, like a new synth that I got
Mhm.
or anything, there are already equivalent apps on iOS that I could use instead.
Yeah.
Why would I want to use hardware at all? And the thing is that if you're asking it, you might not have hardware.
Yeah.
If you have it, you can somewhat understand it.
Hmm.
If price is always a barrier, which I can get, then you'll kind of force yourself to think that you don't need it. You know, I've
Right.
been there and I'm still doing it many times. I would love to get myself a big polybrute or something, you know, but that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. But there's this thing, okay? So there was this thing back when I was much, much younger and very drunk at the time. I was in front of this Buchla, okay? This full system. And when I was touching it and the speakers were on too loud and I was doing something and I was so in it, I was one with this machine.
Yeah.
Okay? I get that if I'm using Borderlands Granular on the iPad, it was designed to make it into an instrument. This booklet was the same thing. I could feel the vibrations from it. I sound weird now. It's
No,
almost like
I
Deepak
understand what you're saying.
Chopra kind of thing. But the thing is, you touch the metal of the casing and you can feel the static electricity of it. It's alive. You open a window, it gets cold, and suddenly your pitch just flies out the window, and now you have
Yeah.
to close it up. Okay, just put on a fire or something. Let's get the pitch back. You know, it's just I still love it. I still love it. I get that, you know? I
Yeah.
get why you want to do that. And that's why I have so many MIDI controllers. How many MIDI controllers do I need? I counted. I have 11.
Yeah.
How many do I use at a regular basis? 2.
Yeah.
And it's starting to become 3 or 4 because I want everything to be hardwired. I want everything to be dedicated so I know exactly what I'm going for when I'm performing. Because when I'm performing, I'm doing a job and I want that to be done easily. I don't want to be confused by the setup or
Right.
lost.
Yeah. Um, I mean, spoiler alert to those watching. My next video is on the Polybrute, and it's weird because I can't objectively talk about it as a synthesizer because I immediately felt like it was an instrument. You know, it just felt like I it felt like it was more comparable to a guitar or a piano than it was a piece of pro audio gear. And it kind of looks that way too. It's like a wooden synthesizer and it's very well built and heavy. And I just I lost myself completely playing it the same way that I lose myself playing the piano or the guitar. And it's interesting how meaningful that was to me, to where I just realized that like I can't make an objective video about this. I can't do a review or a tutorial because it's just going to be I'm just gonna look like a shill. So I just have to like be more weird and arty if I'm gonna doing it. If I actually have chills from an instrument, then like I can't even attempt to be objective. But I do wish that my iPad video was like that. That I wish that I felt that way about the iPad. I want to someday feel that way about the iPad. I want to feel that way about smaller things at some point, hopefully.
But
Um,
that's the thing. I don't feel like that all the time with the iPad, especially not when it's throwing up at me, because it feels like
yeah,
it's like holding a little baby. It's really cute. It's lovely, you know. It's so weird and jiggly and everything, and then it throws up in your mouth. That's gonna happen, but you still love it.
yeah. I was thinking about that. I was thinking about like why like I have a friend, Sarah Long. I mean, I'm not saying anything that's not public because she posts about this all the time, but Sarah Longfield is a friend of mine, and she has a new MacBook something or other. I don't know if it's one of the M1 ones or whatever, but like Logic just gives her 200% CPU constantly on this thing.
Oh,
And it's this brand new computer. It's like everything is brand new. There should be no reason why this is happening. She's a professional musician. Um, and it's just the bane of her existence. And I just think to myself, like, how is that possible when you have specialized hardware and software? Apple owns Logic, and they obviously make their own hardware. So how is this possible? With Windows, you could make an argument for it. You could be like, well, you have 6,000 different types of laptop configurations, and you're not even getting into PC builds, or even Android. You can make there's thousands of different Android phones. But when it's one company making the same software and hardware, and I didn't say this in my video because I don't like to say things that I can't really like back up, but I think it's just because pro audio is such a drop in the bucket to Apple's overall monetary interests, right? Like what us musicians would spend on something is nothing compared to how many people have an iCloud subscription, or how many people uh, are just paying a subscription for an app that maybe isn't pro audio that Apple gets 30% of, something like that. And so that's kind of unfortunate. I almost wish that, um, the United States actually at one point before Trump, we we had our targets on Apple to in an antitrust lawsuit, and it was basically because the way that they moved over to Swift programming language, where
Mhm.
it's very easy to make something. At the time, it was very easy to make an Android app work with Apple, but Apple had intentionally made it nearly impossible to make an iOS app work with Android. And
Ah,
the US was like, okay, this is actually an antitrust violation. So there was talks about possibly breaking up some of the things that Apple was involved with, much like what we did with Windows. And ultimately, that worked out very well. Like for the consumer, it didn't work out well for Microsoft's money, but it worked very well for um, you know, essentially for what Windows does, and being able to buy an Xbox and not have to have a Windows computer at the same time and things like that. I think that's where it sort of turned out, where it sort of ended up, because people aren't, or I said, or because the company is not as concerned about monopolization because they've had the antitrust suit. Anyway, uh, so anyway, my point being is that I almost wish that would kind of happen. I feel like that would end up very well for people in audio if Apple would almost break up into just an audio part of the company, or a separate sister company that was just pro audio, and that way they would have a lot of monetary interest in making things work the way that we wish they would.
yeah, I mean, personally, I don't believe that would happen, but I'm
Yeah.
hoping that I'm wrong just because of what you say. Like, I can't back this up with data or anything. It's just that I look at what the market is, and I look at the amounts of apps that exist that aren't audio,
Mhm.
and what they're trying to sell, and they're trying to sell iDevices, okay? And they break up these iDevices in a million parts so that they can sell us dongles, and then also they get the money from the developers. But I have to actually input something there, because from January, I think from January 1st, Apple did this switch actually. So if you are an app developer now, then if you're making a less than $1 million, I think it is, per year,
Mhm.
you will only have to pay Apple 15%, which is pretty
Yeah.
nice. So at least something good, it's not often I give Apple praise.
No,
My
that
viewers know that. They know that, and I do rage a lot. I even made this I made a rap track basically rapping about Apple, and I don't know. Have you seen that? Have you seen that? You should watch
no,
it.
I
You should
haven't.
watch it.
I just noticed a very important voice is actually in the chat now, though. I just looked up, and Christopher Floyd is here, and he is a developer. Um, and I almost wonder if I could run a different window to give him a good bow. Um, well, anyway, yeah, welcome, Christopher Floyd. uh, yeah, just wonder if I can run a different window. That would be helpful for a couple different things. Um, but um, okay, I don't think I can with this. Have you ever done it in a StreamYard?
Yeah, are you trying to
Okay.
share like a browser view?
Yeah, well, I guess just I'll rather than getting into a technical wormhole, Christopher Floyd is the lead developer of Superliminal. If you've ever played that, have you played that game? It's I mean it's on
No, but
Xbox
no.
and
I
Steam
think
and everywhere.
I've watched it being played by some YouTuber at some point. I'm the kinds of games that I play is stuff like Fallout and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. Superliminal kind of breaks the rules of gaming in a weird way. Like it's almost like playing. It's almost like walking around in a three-dimensional optical illusion. Um, so, for example, you'll walk up to a door, a tiny door, and you'll have to walk up really close to make it bigger, and then walk back, and then walk, and it'll get even bigger when you walk up closer again. Things like that. Like it's very trippy puzzles.
Yeah,
Um,
sounds interesting.
yeah, definitely. I recommend anybody check it out. It has a generative piano uh, soundtrack going on.
Okay, I like that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I
it,
like that stuff.
yeah. And I think it's funny. I think it's kind of late to Steam. I think it actually came to Steam a little bit later than it was on Xbox and other PC places, and I think I think it has an overwhelmingly positive rating right now, and it's doing pretty well. So yeah, congrats, Christopher. That's really awesome. Um, anyway, uh, yeah, I'm so another thing that everybody's been asking me since I made my iPad video is Android audio, and that's. Do you have any experience with that? That's
My own personal experience is now 8 years old. Okay, so that is something I'm trying to change because the next thing I did on my auction site app is that I'm now looking for a very new or the newest type or last year or 2 years
yeah,
model, so I can get one at a steal price again because I want one because I need that for my next video on it because I have a video that is kind of popular for my channel, that people watch, and now the information is getting old. And I've been talking to people within the audio community that actually codes, and there is this developer that makes this app called N-Track. You might have heard of it.
yeah.
Yeah, so he basically makes something called Audio Route, and it's supposed to work like Audio Bus for Android. And
Hmm.
it went so far as him talking to was it Google
Yeah.
directly? Yeah. And they said that they were interested, and then not a word. So what he decided to do was he has actually put his code out as open source. Any other developer out there who makes audio apps can now implement that just like Audiobus does on iOS and have
Yeah.
apps talk to each other. And so far, unfortunately, there's only one other developer that does. So on iOS, on Android, there are only two apps that really talk to each other through the system. But technically, all of them could if these
Yeah.
developers just started implementing this.
Hmm.
So I have a video brewing, and I've been working on it constantly, actually for 2 years. It's just that for that final touch, I God dang it, I do need an Android device. I can't make another video without having one. It's
Yeah.
not possible.
Right. Yeah. I think unfortunately the problem, or I guess what I would assume is the biggest challenge that an Android app developer faces is the whole portion of the population that buys the $70 Walmart Android phone, and then when an app doesn't work properly on that, or when it runs slow and they have bad latency, then they give it a 1-star review, and they kind of suffer there. And I almost wish that there was a way that I don't know. I almost wish that there was a way that they could. I wonder if you can. I wonder. I actually don't know this, and I should, because I mean I have loaded plenty of custom APKs in my own apps on Android devices. Um, if you could basically make an app and just have it only work for certain models that you verify, um, like this will work for the Samsung Galaxy and Note and the Google Pixel, and we haven't tested it on the other stuff yet, so you just can't buy it yet, and you could download the demo maybe. But I wonder if that would help with the App Store rating, because App Store rating is like everything, isn't it? For an app success.
Yeah, that's the thing. When people ask me, like, do you use the App Store rating? No, of course not. I'm the guy that reviews stuff. I
Yeah.
look at specific data from the developers. I talk to the developers. I try the app, and then so I never look at them, and I even forget to leave ratings all the time because there's so many apps I have to test. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm always low on time, but the problem is still there on iOS, with 1-star ratings for something not working, or people leaving feedback to developers through that. And back in the days, it used to be harder for developers to see feedback from other countries' stores.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a huge problem, and that still happens. And both Apple and Android need to rethink their rating system. Do something there, because it's too easy to just 1-star something when it turns out, like, I retweeted something recently that Bram Bose tweeted, and he said that I'm tired of getting 1-star ratings for something that is a problem with iOS. People starting their apps and then they can't see their AUV3s at
Yeah.
all. It's like empty. Yeah. And all you need to do is restart iOS. It's not the app that
Yeah.
you're using, it's iOS. It's known since years back, and they still haven't fixed that. And now he's got a 1-star rating, and that's probably not going to get changed,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, and I think this is sort of, I mean, this sort of goes over into into like Spotify world and stuff like that too. Like I feel like a lot of this, I, increasingly things that I deal with on my channel, or something that I have to notice a lot, is that there's like the music industry, and there's the music gear industry, and then there's the tech industry, and the tech industry does not give a shit about the music industry or musicians or any of those other things. It's its own entity that's sort of, it's new money. It just exists for growth more than it does for profit, which is like, I mean, inevitably, if the longer I talk about this, the more like weird, angry capitalism slash verse socialism comments that we're going to see in the chat. But yeah, basically it was interesting to do a video and do a lot of studying up on Spotify and just how addicted to growth they are, much like how Amazon was, or Amazon still is addicted to growth, like more so than profit. They'd rather start a drone program that didn't work than they would make that money in profit and pay taxes on it. So it's pretty interesting. But yeah, we get left behind in that. Developers get left behind unless you are developing something like Face App, where people are shelling out $7 a month, and then Apple or Google is able to keep $250 of that every month.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I think that we need to take care of our developers, the ones that are sticking with us,
Yeah.
especially the small indie ones,
Right.
because, like, I've done this research now. I work on several projects, and I always take my time before I do something. I don't say that I don't make mistakes, but I make less mistakes because of all the research I do. You know how that works.
Yeah.
And I guess a lot of people in the audience also understand why we want to do it like that. But the thing is that when I talk to developers about, earning profits and what it takes to actually live off your apps that you're making, well, for most developers that are successful, unless they have an app like something like a Moog Model D, that is gonna get, just by the name, it's gonna get, it's great synth. It's gonna get a lot of clout just from the name. For the right reasons, yes, but it doesn't need that much of a push to get pushed out there. All right.
Yeah.
But if someone else puts out a synthesizer that is just marvelous in every possible way, where does the cloud come from? It doesn't have any cloud. You need to do that push yourself. And if it doesn't work within the first 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, when everything falls, you're not selling anymore, you're not able to stay up there between the top 20s on the App Store, then that was it. Now you have to do the next thing, either an update, a preset upgrade, something, to get the cloud up again for another week or 3 days. And that window is going to get shorter and shorter. So most developers that are successful, they have an output of between 3 to 6 apps per year that they put out. And now you get into a problem when it's gone, on for about 5 years.
Yeah.
How many apps do you have to update? we talked about this, and Star Ackerman, who is quite well known in the music industry, she is responsible for releasing about 80 apps herself for companies. Um, she said that sometimes you just have to drop stuff, and that's why we're seeing a lot of apps just disappear. Because if they're not making money, why should you put in time for
Right.
them?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Makes sense. Makes full sense.
Hmm.
And that, of course, makes me as a consumer angry when my most favorite app is disappearing. So I get both sides, and it's a hard line to walk. But out of the developers out there, the small ones, we need to take care of them. And whenever they get into a situation where Apple can't help them, and Apple is telling them, you have to take your app, put it out as a new app because we can't help you. So
Yeah.
now your customers have to pay for it again, and everyone gets raging mad.
Yeah.
Now, when that app costs you $3, just please stop. Just buy it again. If you love that app, if you love that developer, buy it again.
Hmm. I've I noticed I've had, I mean, I haven't said anything. I've talked to them, but I haven't said anything publicly just because, I try to complaining about something sometimes takes a lot more work than praising something because you want to make sure that you're right if you're when you're in our position, complaining about something without research is potential defamation. So, it's kind of um but Audulus, uh, that's an app that I've had a lot of frustration with in terms of I've paid for it on so many different platforms and so many different versions where I feel like I've thrown like hundreds of dollars into this app at this point. And yeah, and then like version 4 is just missing in action. I didn't have I didn't have the best experience talking to the developers.
Uh,
I was kind of like, yeah, but I was really excited to yeah, I was just to be honest, part of the iPad episode was delayed thinking that, version 4 was going to come out at some point because I felt like you can't really have an iPad episode without doing an Audulus, thing, but I just couldn't because it's just I felt a little ripped off. But now that you're describing it this way, it actually does make a lot more sense.
I mean, if you ever get them on the line, like really talk to them, ask them what they've really been through. They
Yeah,
might be in this position where they're just simply not making enough, and they're just they're scraping their knees, trying to make their bills, or something like that. It might be that, and I've seen a lot of resentment, among some developers, and I'm never gonna say who that is, but
yeah,
and I can understand it because I can feel it. They've lost something, and some have had to leave the platform because they just couldn't make it. And it is a hard world,
yeah,
right? Some people would just say, "Grow up, go get another job."
right,
But when you spent 50 years of your life programming and you suddenly get into something, it goes well, but then overnight it just topples over. You're getting older, you're not getting younger,
yeah,
and this is the only thing you do, and suddenly you're in a position where you're making something that takes you just as amount the same amount of work that it takes you to make something that you make for desktop that you can then sell for maybe a more reasonable price, and now you're selling it on an iOS, and now you have to take down the price, and people will say, "Oh, but it's a bigger market and everything," but sometimes that just doesn't add up depending on the prices you set.
yeah. I think it's funny too because usually if you have somebody who is like a journalist losing their job or somebody who is a newspaper photographer or whatever, the meme has always been learn to code, like hashtag learn to code, like, and it's like when developers are dealing with the same, constant, uh,
Yeah, learn to
yeah,
code and make face swapping apps for $1.
yeah,
That's
right.
literally what it is today. And yeah, you can sell a lot of face swapping apps in a week. You could practically, if you do everything right and you do it at the right time, you could become a millionaire. You could.
Yeah.
But
It's interesting to me how much of a shit show gaming has become on Android or iOS. Like that's one of in Android, I at least can run an ad blocking DNS overall. Like I can't. I know you can do it on Apple for Wi-Fi networks or something. I think maybe you can do it over just mobile. I'm not really sure because I
I
only have iPads, so I only do it
yeah,
by
yeah.
Wi-Fi. But yeah, with Android, I just got a new Android phone yesterday actually, and literally the first thing I did was like open up those DNS settings because I saw an ad and I was like, no, no, no. You know, as I like show pity for journalists, now I'm also like being like, fine, looking at ads. What are you talking about? Anyway, yeah. So it's a little better because at least you could play like the scammy ad games with an ad blocker on Android that are still decent games, but they've just been ruined by like over advertisement. But yeah, on iOS you can't really do that as easily. And I just can't believe how bad that got so fast.
It got really, really bad. I
How
mean,
such an opportunity for so many cool things just gone. It's almost impossible to find a good game
because
for
it's a
out of that.
perfect platform for making that type of
Yeah, sure,
content,
just
you know?
abuse. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, it's so easy. And it shocks me because of how Apple tries to keep everything locked down. I download this game, I open it up, and it's so goddamn evasive, like invasive. It really
yeah.
just breaks everything, opens up windows here and there, and
Mhm.
links there and there, and changed the color of my screen.
Yeah.
How did that get through testing? Apple, seriously? Like, seriously? No. No, 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 no. These are the people that didn't want to let what? Who was it? What? The FBI into their systems or
Yeah.
something? And you're letting these people do this with their apps? Are you serious? This is ridiculous. Coming from a company like that, that's absolutely ridiculous. And I lose so much respect when I see that. And another thing is also the amount of in-app purchases we see.
Yep. Yeah.
Buying, every game is a pay to not wait type of game.
Uh-huh.
Here's a wall, tap it. Oh, you tapped 3 times. You want to use some acorns or some other arbitrary
Yeah.
value of something, currency. It's horrible, and people spend like sick amounts of money, and then you have kids playing on there, and you know, I've seen the discussions online. Have the parents parent? Yes, of course, parents
Yeah.
should parent, but
That's easier said than done too.
yeah,
I feel like a lot of it's so easy when being 20 years old and being like, I'm never gonna let my kid watch TV. It's gonna corrupt him. And then like when you have a 3-year-old that wants to watch Blippy, like you go watch an ad. Like I need to make dinner. I need to like it's so different when you actually have a kid. Because yeah, I mean I've obviously my whole life I was just thinking to myself like, yeah,
I mean, if you think about it, if we look at the platform that we are on, YouTube, for the longest time, a huge chunk of their money came from children watching ads.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, huge, yeah, massive amount,
What?
yeah, and man, it's interesting too because I've thought about this a bit, and it's like I wish it were more ethical to like just have an island of, this is going to be like the worst thing I've ever said, like my channel's just going to get taken down immediately. I wish it was more ethical to just have like an island of like children that you could experiment on to make like to make like yeah, there's no good way to say this, to essentially figure this stuff out. Like, is it more detrimental to not show a child any advertisements and then send them to a school full of children that see nothing but advertisements? And
Okay, I get what you're trying to say.
or even things like what would happen if you just like raised a kid with a piano? It's like, here, play the piano. What would the music sound like in 20 years? Obviously none of these things are ethically okay, but it does make me think a lot, like, is it more detrimental to see something that is potentially toxic and keep a kid away from it, and now all of a sudden he's not going to be able to fit in with everybody else who's been exposed to that thing that is potentially toxic?
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that you should arm your kid with the best type of knowledge to handle the future, and whatever that future might look like, we're not going to be in it. So
Yeah.
we need to prepare them for that. So I think that not showing them could be a dumb thing, but if you're showing them and you're sitting and watching it with them and you're analyzing it, then that becomes a completely different thing.
Yeah. So okay, so I'm gonna go on a little weird tangent here, and this is just something that I've been thinking about lately. This is gonna get like weirdly sounds it's turning into a Joe Rogan experience, I think. Anyway, so um, I was in Walmart like 2 weeks ago with the mask on, rubber gloves on, everything. And I was just doing some grocery shopping and I needed like some sweatpants and or some like tights to go biking in. And I thought to myself while I was buying it, ugh, Walmart clothes. I don't like, this is what if I buy I like this, but I don't know if I want to buy it because everybody has it because it's from Walmart or it's recognizably from Walmart. And I was like, wait, why do I think this? Why do I think this way? This is really a shitty way to think. And I thought back to when I was a kid, where if you had shoes that were Kmart shoes, you got made fun of. And I grew up in a poor area. I grew up in one of the poorest areas in America, in South Chicago, right? And so very weird to grow up in a poor area, yet have have children embarrassed to wear affordable clothing that was just as good, if not better, than like the fashionable brands. And so when I was younger, it was like Z Cavarici was like the pants that everybody was wearing. It was like the MC Hammer pants. Um, and they cost $150 for a pair, and nobody could
Oh,
afford them, but somehow people would do it. And then also Nike Air Jordans had just come out. I recently, like 3 years ago, bought my first pair of Jordans and was like proud of it because I'd always wanted one as a kid. I'd always wished I had Jordans, but instead I had some, the Reebok that were on sale or something like that. Anyway, so I thought about this, like, why did this happen? And the first side of that is advertising. Like I remember ads when I was a kid, and you would always have a new game that came out, let's say Crossfire or some stupid game that the kids were playing.
mm,
And the kids who were playing the game were with friends and they're always very happy. And then there was always the loser kid that didn't have the product.
yeah.
And then this ended up getting associated with brands. The loser kid didn't have the Nike. The loser kid didn't have the high C. The loser kid had the generic brand from the store that cost 10 cents less. And it got really, really toxic. And so now here's where I'm going to make a pretty big leap. So I grew up and now I'm starting to recognize this a lot more. And I'm starting to think about poor shaming, which is something that I do in my head. And it doesn't make any sense because I grew up, again, in a poor area. I've been I'm a professional musician and I started somewhere. So I was very poor for a very long time. But still, when I see somebody with like a car that doesn't have a bumper, I like laugh about it. Or if I see somebody who, like makes some sort of very efficient but not stylish choice in clothing or style or anything like that, I would laugh about it, or I would, maybe even make a joke to a family member or something like that. And I kind of realized like, okay, so this is toxic, and this to me ties in with everything that's happening, at least on I think in England too, but in America, I think this ties in with why you would have so much Trump support in a trailer park, in a very poor area, why you would have, the vast majority of the people living in the living in poverty vote for a billionaire who, has never in his life needed anything to survive that he didn't already have. He's had a silver spoon his entire life. You don't even need to get into his politics to know that he has nothing in common with you and he doesn't care about you in any way if you're poor. So why would you ever find this person appealing? And it's because poor shaming is so insane in America, at least, that all of the people who live in this trailer park don't see themselves as poor. They see themselves as temporarily displaced, but they will be at Trump's level at some point, because that's kind of how that's the American dream. That's kind of what we all do, is we all think that we're going to be millionaires at some point. We cannot be content with the fact that we're going to die maybe as a middle class person, but probably a lower class, and I am guilty of this myself. Like it's hard for me to imagine myself, dying with $10,000 to my name so somebody can pay for my funeral. I can only imagine myself dying a millionaire, and it's like a toxic American thing that I'm starting to recognize is a big reason why people are so likely to be friendly to folks like Donald Trump, who are toxic in every way. But, you know, anyway, I hope that made sense. But
No, I think it's interesting hearing it from someone who grew up there. I mean, I'm from Sweden, so our system is completely different from yours. Our culture is very different from yours.
yeah,
And I can admit that there's many times that we over here are scratching our heads over the way that some things are going in the US. Um, and I can see how it got to the point where it is. I can see all of it. But
yeah.
I still wonder, like, I still wonder sometimes why.
It's like in our historical DNA, because back, like, something a lot of people don't know is back when slavery was around in America, most people in the South did not have slaves. The South was very, very poor. And most of the people fighting in the Confederate Army did not even know anybody who had slaves, but they believed that at some point they would. So they were fighting for that right to own slaves. But only the richest people owned slaves. And the vast majority of slaves in the South were members of, were not members, were enslaved by giant plantations that had hundreds of slaves. It was actually quite rare for a family to just have a slave. It was always like the wealthiest 1% had all the slaves and then everybody else was starving. Yet the South still went to war over this because they believed that they were just temporarily starving and they were actually going to die as a rich plantation owner who had many slaves. So it's fucked up for centuries. It's very, it's very, it's a very odd thing, but I can see parallels with it in the UK as well, like with the referendum and the Brexit and things like that. Oh, we lost him at the worst possible time, I think. Hey, everybody, I'm going to read the chat. I think we lost his connection, or I just went off on a tangent that was too crazy. So hi, everybody. I'm going to try and get him back on here. I think he still has the link. These streams have like the worst timing with everything. The number one, if we go down to a list to like the number one worst timing with everything, when I did the ACLU stream, and basically just started this Black Lives Matter stream right as and I lost my first guest right before that, and then just sat here for an hour being like, so hi. Oh, here he is. He's back. Wait, he's back, but he's not sitting in front of the camera. So I don't want to add him to the public stream just yet. I'm going to wait until he appears in the frame. Maybe he's peeing. Not sure. There he is. Okay, I'm adding him in. All right. I was worried that I just got too crazy there for a second. I was like,
No,
did I go too
no.
far?
That would have been fun though. Me just
Yeah, just being like,
disappearing.
you know what?
Oh, I don't want to be part of this.
Yeah, I thought we were talking about iOS. I don't want to.
I'm just restarting my router. When I felt it, it was hotter than.
Oh yeah. Okay. You're also freezing up a bit. So nice. I like this. It's a nice like well, just so you know, if you can't hear me, Jakob, then or I'm sorry, if you can hear me, then you are currently not in frame. Okay, now he's out again. All right. Oh, there you are. You're back. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Lost you.
It's the internet. It's the internet connection from my broadband. It's gonna be restarted anytime soon, and I'll try to jump over to that then. But we'll have to do it like this until
fine.
then.
All's well. Yeah, I like how when I talk about these things, the chat starts moving a lot faster. Like I don't actually see what all the close are, or all the close. I read the word close. I don't actually see what all the comments are, but I just see it's like the stream just goes. It's like a stock ticker.
Yeah, I saw someone mentioning that I'm old enough to remember the when they killed our our leader here in Sweden,
Hmm.
Olof Palme, and yes, I am. You and me were the same age, born
Really?
'79, I think. Yeah,
Oh
in
yeah, yeah.
October.
Okay. Oh, amazing. Okay, you look very young. I thought you were younger.
No, no, I think there's a day between us. I was born the 29th. When were you born?
28th.
Yeah, you see, it's the
Yeah.
same. So 42.
Okay.
It's the answer to everything. You know that?
Yeah. So yeah, you've had the Z Cavariccis maybe. Well, no, our worlds were intensely different when we were born, weren't they? Like
Yeah,
before the EU. Like,
yeah,
I mean, the Berlin Wall was still up.
yeah,
The Soviet
exactly.
Union was still a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I even remembered a woman marrying the Berlin Wall. We saw a whole show about that on TV back then.
Hmm.
Some weird. I don't know why I just said that. Why I remember that.
Yeah. No, it's yeah, it is kind of crazy to think about how different the world was. Um, another weird thing to think about is like it seems like it's so far. The Soviet Union seems so far away, but 9/11 doesn't, or at least to an American. Like 9/11, it feels like we're still in that era. It feels like we're still in the era of 9/11, yet like the Soviet Union feels like it's like 60 eras back. And maybe it's different. Maybe it's different over there because you were so much closer and more involved with the Soviet Union than America was.
It depends on who you are as a person. If you were
Yeah.
a young kid, then you grew up with the internet. Sweden was very early with good broadband connection. The
Okay.
situation over here when it comes to broadband connection,
Yeah.
me saying that when I just had a failure, but usually it's better than what you have. It doesn't look good for me right now. But and so very early on, a lot of the kids you heard getting like, caught up in hacking this and that, they were often from Sweden or Norway or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was an internet kid. I grew up with internet. I basically I almost said had a computer up my ass, but that's not right. That's not right.
Yeah.
But I grew up with it, so I know it intimately. I've seen it change and everything. And when you say the world was different, yeah, I remember a time where I had to cycle. I had to jump on my bike to go to my friend's home to knock on the door to know if he was home or not, and then
Oh
I had
yeah.
to go out and find him. This thing with a cell phone, that was a dream. It was a
Yeah.
dream of having something like that. I remember pagers, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a pager, and when I was a teenager, I had a pager, and then I didn't have a home phone. We couldn't afford a home phone at the time, so I would walk like 2 blocks to a payphone, and I had a
Yeah.
little device from Radio Shack that would I would mention the name of it. It's like a red box and a blue box, but I had a device from Radio Shack that would emulate the sound that quarters made. Like I hacked it to emulate the little and you'd play it into the speaker, and I'd be able to call the people back without paying the phone company. Without, um,
I'm not gonna admit to doing anything like that, but we had phone cards later on. They went from quarters, not
yeah,
quarter. We have kronas in Sweden, but they went from that to phone cards. So it's like this plastic thing with a chip on it later on
yeah,
that we used, and you could do some stuff to those if you had
sure.
the technical knowledge.
Um, yeah, so I see people talking about hacking payphones. So I have an amazing payphone hack. It's the dumbest thing, and I well, it's not dumb because I made money and I actually like was able to buy food and stuff because I was pretty poor when I was a teenager. And so I would go to high school and I would walk to high school, and there are all these payphones along the route. And I would take cardboard and I would shove them in the coin return. I would shove the cardboard way up there on all of these payphones. And about a week later, I would get Saturday detention at school, which is basically where you have to come in on a Saturday and just sit there because you got in trouble doing something. And I would always naturally get that anyway because I was an asshole. And so I would then I would leave. I would walk out of Saturday detention, say, I can't do this anymore. And they'd be like, well, you better, otherwise you're going to get suspended. And I'd say, oh, no, I don't care. So I'd leave and I'd go upstairs in the science lab and I'd steal sulfuric acid and then walk home
Uh-huh.
and I'd pour it into the coin slot. I'd like chug it in and it would dissolve the cardboard and all the quarters would come out. And doing this from like 8 payphones actually, amounted to like $70 or something. It was actually a lot of money. And you just had to keep doing it at a certain cycle, otherwise they'd call the phone company and but that was my big scam when I was a teenager, is pouring sulfuric acid into payphone coin slots. But
Yeah, we were always trying to figure out how to get extra bit of money when we was younger too. I wouldn't say that we were poor, but by Swedish standards, you are basically. Okay, so it's
yeah.
not poor in the same way. It's poor is very different depending on where you are in the world,
Hmm.
and what area you're in. So where I come from, it's kind of like where the poor are, but it's nothing. If you would come there, you would say, "What do you mean? This looks fine. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
it's good. Like people are at least people aren't killing each other every day, and stuff
Hmm.
like that." And yeah, you would be right, absolutely. But that's my vision of it then, and we couldn't afford most things, new things. And when my mother wanted to buy me a Commodore 64, she had to save up for it for years, to do
Yeah.
that. So, but she did, yeah. And same with the Amiga and other stuff. That's how I got into computer music, basically. So I know what it's like trying to hustle all the time. And what
Right.
I got into was drugs instead. And so I did that. I wasn't savvy enough. I knew some technical stuff. I picked apart some recorders and stuff and couldn't put them back together. So that wasn't really my deal. Otherwise, I would have probably been pouring acid into phones too, just like you
Oh,
did.
I definitely, I definitely, I'm no stranger to drugs at all. Especially growing up on the South Side, like anybody who had money was involved in the drug industry in some
Oh,
way.
okay.
And it wasn't an interesting, it's kind of funny how like deep, how personal this gets. But when I was in high school, I had these two friends who were crackheads and they would just smoke crack. And I went to high school in the suburbs outside of Chicago, but I grew up in Chicago, and so I went to high school a little bit far away, and it was in I guess a more middle class, like lower middle class white neighborhood. And these two guys, they're both in their names were Joe, and they would smoke crack. And one time I smoked crack with the Joes, and uh, my girlfriend at the time, my high school girlfriend, found out and was like, "Did you smoke crack?" And I was like, "Yeah. What's it to you?" And she was like, I'm not gonna have a boyfriend who smokes crack." And I was like, "Well, fuck you then. I'll do whatever I want." And I didn't actually know that there was a stigma to smoking crack because everybody was smoking crack in South Chicago. So I was just like, I thought adults just smoked crack. I thought that was like what you did. You got home from, you got home from a hard day's work and just smoked some crack, and that was just what you did with your day. I had no idea. Same with heroin. I was like, yeah, heroin relaxes you. What's the big deal? I
Oh
didn't.
my
Yeah,
God,
I
yeah.
mean, I guess you get addicted, sure, but yeah, it was very weird to sort of then, I guess, and then become a professional musician, and everybody and crack is stigmatized, but everybody's doing coke before their shows, and everybody, it's interesting how class plays such a big role in drugs, which is
Oh
just so
yeah.
bizarre. And drug addiction, like, there's this whole period in the late 90s when it was cool to be addicted to heroin. Like, and now obviously being addicted to opiates is not desirable in any scene whatsoever. But yeah, it was
No.
very interesting. Um, uh, but these days, yeah, I'm just for anybody who thinks that I'm smoking crack. I'm not smoking crack these days. I'm interested in the furthest extreme of hallucinogens at this point, but that's about it. And mostly just because um, I don't know, but just trying to figure out what reality is has always been something that's uh, been in the back of my head somewhere. But anyway, yeah, I am very interested, and especially now that I'm older, I'm very interested in what poverty means in different countries. Like what poverty means in your country is so different than what poverty means in mine.
Yeah,
But
it all
not
depends on
necessarily.
where you go in this country too.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people would go to a place like Sweden and think that a middle class person was maybe living in more poverty just because of what I was talking about with poor shaming. Like here you have so many people who live in like they don't have health insurance and they're financing a sports car, and they don't look like they're in poverty at all. They look like they're very well off. But, in actuality, they have a very finite limit on how long they can live that lifestyle until they find somebody else who can finance something that they can't afford, and things like that. That's very common in lower income areas here as well. So
I wanted to ask you, how is it going in chat? Do we have any questions or anything we need to answer? I'm
um
asking because it's like 1.5 hours into the stream. I usually
sure.
want to check with the if that's
I have
okay. I mean, it's your channel. You do what
no
you
I have
want.
a lot of people saying DMT. um yeah, I mean, I
DMT.
can't,
Okay.
yeah, I can't say too much, but like before I start my existentialism project, which is something that's coming in the future for me, I do want to. I've obviously tried. I've tried obviously I've tried DMT, but the 5-MeO variety is one that I'm particularly interested in. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what people are asking here. People are just comparing. They're telling you that you need to be louder.
That I
Um,
need to be louder.
yeah. They're saying that there's a lot of anti-capitalism talk going on, but that's, I get a lot of anti-capitalism talk in my videos that I make about things like Spotify and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just really funny because I'm like, well, what do you want me to do about this? Like, it's a weird thing. The capitalism needs to end, Ben. It's like, well, yeah, but I'm going to walk my dog today instead of ending capitalism and inventing a new way for, trade to
So,
work.
sometimes I think some comments might just be venting to someone that they know.
Yeah.
Like that I do that to other YouTubers. So I think that's why I think that could be a thing. Sometimes I just want to say something to someone who just already might understand what I'm feeling a bit, and yeah, that it feels good just
Yeah.
venting, right?
Yeah. As far as people are just asking me if I've done any other analogs. Just answer yes to like everything. And then people want us to talk about GameStop.
Oh man. Oh man. Here's the
I
thing, people. I know nothing about stocks or anything. I just listened to a video because I couldn't watch it. I was doing the dishes at the same time.
Yeah.
So I don't fully understand it. All I know is that I stopped being interested as soon as I heard Reddit.
Yeah.
Okay? That's when I stopped listening. I don't understand what happened, but it's too weird for me. Reddit
Yeah.
and then GameStop and then stock. What? What are you talking?
Right.
What?
Yeah. So, do you understand like are you familiar with shorting, with like shorting stocks, essentially borrowing them and then selling them back later in hopes that they fail to gain money and
Let me say
keeping the
this. I
difference?
saw that video with what is it, like Brad Pitt and that what the Big Short.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that one, so I
Okay.
understand it out of that term. If that movie is anything,
Yeah.
correct.
So like the house that I bought from like at a period of time in 2018. Bitcoin was raging, and everybody was asking me about Bitcoin. My uncle had called me about Bitcoin. Some old woman at the dog park had asked me about Bitcoin. And I said, you know what? I'm going to put my savings into shorting Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin crashes, which I believe it will, then I'll buy a house, or I'll, down payment on a house. And if it doesn't, then I'll rent a house, because I had to move houses. Basically, they were selling the house I was renting. And sure enough, it crashed, and here we are. So I have a bit of experience with shorting, and a lot of people were just shorting GameStop, a lot of big hedge funds.
Oh, okay.
Um, and a subreddit is apparent. I might be even wrong about this. I'm not totally, I haven't been like reading every single detail about it, but from my understanding, a subreddit has just been kind of troll investing in GameStop's. Yeah, because basically, as this short keeps losing money, these people who are shorting it have to keep they have to keep providing proof that they can pay the overall price, or they have to drop it, or their hedge fund has to drop it. And um, so everybody is very this is where everybody hears me in the chat right now um is very much on board with what I'm saying, and they're all, but I'm probably going to break from the general opinion of at this point of how people feel about this. So naturally this got in the news, and a lot of people opened up Robinhood accounts or just had Robinhood accounts, which is like a trading app for beginners. It's like a free trading app. And they said, all right, I'm going to put money into the stock market. And this is the thing this is the new Bitcoin for the day. And, and I'm also shoving it to the man or shoving it to Wall Street by doing this. And then now they're all fucked essentially because Robinhood, it had to freeze had to freeze the GameStop trading, and in that time it crashed, and the people who were shorting it in that late in the game have now made a bunch of money, I assume. I haven't looked at it in a few hours, but it was really funny because while I was tweeting on my Twitter, I said, hey, if you have extra money to get into the stock market right now, instead of trolling trolling a short position, maybe uh, use the low interest rates and FHA loans here in the United States to buy a home. That's a way better investment, way safer, and you get to live in your investment. And I argued with a bunch of people. A bunch of people argued with me on that. And while that was happening, the GameStop stock was tumbling. And before I even got to read the arguments, the people yelling at me, Robinhood had already locked the trades. And so I think my overall point that a lot of people are probably going to disagree with me on is that what did you think was going to happen when you trolled when you trolled a short position as one of your first entrances into the world of stock trading? Like your first stock that you buy should be corn. It should be fucking like Apple. It should not be like trolling a short position. It's incredibly complicated. And of course, the people who the people and the algorithms, the AI algorithms who can predict this stuff a lot better and who have enough money to ride these things out are going to win. It's not a fair game. And if you wanted to gamble, maybe going to an online casino would have been a much safer bet, which is not a safe bet. Buying a house would have been a safe bet. So that's my thoughts on it for everybody who wanted me to comment on it. Let's see how many middle fingers there are in the chat at this point. So, and I do believe that what Robinhood did, the app, everybody's saying that it's illegal and that they can't play the same. It's totally illegal what Robinhood did. Basically throwing money at something to troll somebody else or to manipulate a market intentionally is illegal. Ask Elon Musk. He's dealt with, because he tried doing that and he ended up getting completely fucked for doing it. So
Okay.
like he ended up doing the exact same thing. He went to war with people who hold shorts, and yeah. So
So do you think 4chan is gonna do it next?
I mean, I just think like
I'm just seeing this becoming a thing online. Like
yeah,
this is the next big thing gonna happen now.
I don't really know, because I feel like a lot of people are going to. I mean, when you, I just wonder what was going through some people's heads when they signed up for Robinhood this morning or yesterday and entered in their credit card information to buy this stock. Like, I wondered if at any point they were like, I don't really know what I'm doing. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this today. Like maybe I should buy something else. I'm reading some of the chats. Yeah,
I'm
like
thinking it could be like a big lack of information, and then having someone telling you like, hey, this is a good way. You could actually make a lot of money on this or something. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people fell for that too. I've seen that happen before. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, and once it got up, into the hundreds of dollars, I thought to myself like that this is probably a good time to actually buy a short position in GameStop or GameStop. Like this is probably a good time to become one of the enemies in that regard because obviously at some point, whether it be Robinhood or whether it be the Trade Commission, whoever it is, they're going to get involved and blow a whistle and say, okay, this needs to stop. We need to suspend this because it's not uncanny for the stock market to be suspended or for a particular stock to be suspended. It happens all the time. And it happened in our own financial crises. It happened with everything. The entire Dow Jones had been stopped before. It's how you stop the market from collapsing entirely. And, and I think that there are, we think of like, when we think of who the people who were involved in these hedge funds, we think of them as like, three billionaires who are just, smoking $100 bills. But in reality, like some people's retirements, some like lower middle class people's retirements are in kind of they don't know what their hedge fund's doing, or they have like a stock manager who's managing the retirement money and has put a little bit in this hedge fund who doesn't even realize that it's shorting anything or playing any sort of dangerous thing like that. And so it's kind of like you can never just selectively pick your victims in a situation like this. You're always hurting somebody who doesn't deserve to be hurt.
yeah,
But
it's a damn shame. It's a damn shame, especially when you're talking about people who are so old. They've been working all their life, maybe saving up stuff, and now that they want to retire, they can't even do that. Like that, that pisses me off beyond everything else. When we're
yeah,
dealing with people who have already served society in some way.
yeah, yeah. I see some chats here saying like it's ridiculous and rigged, and that's the message. And like, yeah, of course it is. It's the stock market. Like, of course it's rigged. Like, like
I
you're,
just don't deal with it because I don't know what I'm doing. Like you say,
yeah,
I have no idea what that is. So even afraid to go near it. I
yeah,
don't dare read up on it. I don't trust anything I read about it. So I've kind of ignored it my whole life, I think.
yeah. And that's not the worst thing to do. Like I used to day trade a bit just because I was interested in it. Um, and then I traded, it's kind of funny. In 2011, I had, let's see, 2011 or 2012. At one point, I had 2,000 Bitcoins, believe it or not. And then I bought them through Mount Gox, which is a Bitcoin trading. And there's probably like one or two people in chat who are just like holding their head in their hands right now because they know the story. Mount Gox got hacked, lost everybody's Bitcoins. They all went to who knows where. And then Bitcoin eventually became worth a whole lot more. That Bitcoins were worth a hefty amount at that point, and that was actually like the majority of my money was in that. And now I've been in this very, very long Japanese class action lawsuit with Mount Gox to get something back. And I don't believe it's actually going to pay off. I've had people offer to buy my position in that class action lawsuit, but yeah, I was a big fan of Bitcoin in the beginning, and I was an early adopter, but there's just so much fuckery that like you can't actually walk away. It's so rare to walk away rich from anything like that because there's always somebody who just has the game. Like somebody just mentioned in here, they're saying it almost as if I didn't know it. Everything's rigged. Like everything is rigged. If money is involved, someone who's smarter, if someone that's smarter than you exists, your money is going to go to that person. It's in some way or some shape or form. And this kind of falls into what we were talking about with the App Store as well. Like, like all our money is going to go to Apple. No matter what you're doing, Apple's going to make more money than everybody else on your program or on your app or on your device or yeah. So
Yeah, it ties into when people tell me like we should just why don't they listen to us? Why don't they do that? Well, if we were a really, big market share, like let's say that we were half of their market, then would they listen more? Yeah, sure, absolutely. And if we would stop giving them the money, basically, because that's what we're doing. If we're complaining, that's one thing. But if we're complaining and then the other day going to their store or going and buying one of their products, we are patting them on the head for everything
Yeah.
that they do when we're complaining. So the only real way, I didn't even think like this before some of my viewers actually changed my mind and made me realize that that's what it is. If you want to stop something, you shouldn't be handing them a thank you by paying them for doing
Yeah.
it. So I feel like a hypocrite every time I want to complain about something. But we live on hope.
Yeah.
Like, I think most of humanity is living on hope, right? Hope
Hmm.
for something. Even when you have the power to do anything, there's hope of something. So that's why I'm still here. And to get back to iOS, for me it's still the best thing ever. And it's also one of the worst things ever to happen to me. And I'm
Yeah.
in a rabbit hole. I can't get out. And I love it. What can I say?
Well, as far as, I mean, it's kind of funny because it has that sort of double-edged sword where, I mean, I think a lot of, like, for example, one of my best earning videos is, one where I'm yelling about Behringer, or, one where it's kind of interesting that these things that we don't like end
Mm.
up, or yeah, I guess it's just this thing that you love and hate. It's also now, such a huge part of your life, and now you've influenced so many other people, um, with your vast wealth of knowledge on it. And so it's interesting from your perspective, or from, I guess, any like YouTuber's perspective, because, like, yeah, we do hate a lot of things, but we're also married to them in more ways than personal ones.
I will say though that I personally stopped any activities involving anything Behringer after the last thing they did, in where they filed a trademark for Peter Kern's last name.
Yeah.
That went over my limit completely, and I removed all Behringer specific videos of my channel, and I just don't want to deal with a company that does that. That was just way too much. Just putting in trademark,
Yeah. Yeah, it was
for fuck's
absolutely,
sake.
yeah, absolutely ridiculous. um yeah, and it even makes you think about, like, other people who have stock in the company, like how annoyed must they be to, be like, this is,
Yeah,
I,
why did they do that? What did you think? What did they
I
think?
yeah,
Did they think?
I'm
Did they
reading,
think?
I'm reading in the comments, people are doing math on how much my bitcoins would be worth today. um of course I've done that before. Yeah, so it would be somewhere in the 60 millions, had I hung on. Okay, so first of all, this is playing I talked about this a little bit on Molten's show yesterday. Uh, this is loss aversion, and I recognize loss aversion. And the truth is I was about to leave Bitcoin when they were about 150 a Bitcoin. That's when I was going to leave, because that would have been $250,000, um, for me, and that was an enormous amount of money. And at that time, I had made, I don't know, maybe a similar amount of money, and I opened up a nonprofit music school with that money. I didn't intend to be paid back, and I never was paid back for that. And I think, for me, after a certain point, like, I have what I'm comfortable with, then I have, like, all of the shit that companies send me, which is, like, around my house and stuff. Even with that, I'm doing a residency program, so people can come live in my guest room and use all my fucking gear. Like, that's
Hmm.
because I agree with capitalism in a lot of ways. And I'm actually probably closer to a libertarian than anything else, but it's a wide spectrum, and I have feelings in a lot of different places. But to say that 68 million, I don't cry about that $60 million, other than I could have helped a lot of people with that $60 million, because I don't know what to do with $60 million. Like, I have a, yeah, like, what would I get? A battery operated bike, maybe, and ride the bike trail I ride faster. I don't really know Like, you know, I don't want a sports car really. I guess a self-driving car would be cool. Yeah, like I can't think above $100,000. It's kind of that's my limit. I wouldn't buy a bunch of property. I wouldn't buy a plane. You know, it's none of that stuff interests me. Somebody's asking me if I had 60 million, would I still make YouTube videos? Fuck yeah, I would. Absolutely. I would make more money doing writing music for ads than I would on YouTube, a whole lot more. And that's what I did for a very long time. But I do this because I like it more, and it's a little bit closer to education. So, yeah. How you do you make your most of your income from YouTube? You don't have to answer this, by the way, if it's too weird to answer financial
The
question.
income from YouTube is so low, so I have to scrounge up money from all other places.
Hmm.
So when you've got a channel like mine and you do not litter your videos with ads, which I do not,
Yeah.
because I can't stand watching too many ads in a video, and that's why I don't want to force my viewers to watch that amount of ads. I've seen videos that are 10 minutes long that have 6 ads in them. That's
Yeah.
horrible. Okay, so I'll put one ad in there, but if it's 10 minutes and the flow of the video is nice, I usually just put one ad at the beginning.
Right.
As soon as my videos go over 15 minutes or up to 20, I'll put an ad in there, mid ad, and it's not even in a good spot where I can make money of it. It's usually in a spot where if you just double tap on your screen, if you're reading or listening to it on a mobile phone, then you're gonna probably skip over that point, so you
Yeah.
won't be watching it anyway. So I after making 745 videos in a span of 6 years, and
Wow.
putting in thousands and thousands of hours. One of the videos I worked on took me 170 hours to make, and I was never paid by the company that did that. And the only thing I got to keep was a pocket operator. And I don't have any sponsors apart from the gear I'm being given. I turn down stuff all the time if I don't feel I need it, or if I don't feel like I can use it. I don't just make videos just to make views. I make videos for views, yes, because I'm on YouTube, but that's not my main focus. I focus on the content first. I focus on the viewer first. So I make in a month between $200 and $300
Okay. Yeah.
from all that
That's
work. So that's it.
yeah.
That's it.
That's
And when it's a bad spell during summer, I make way less, way
hmm,
less. And during Christmas, I'll make a little bit more. So that's it. And here's the thing: because of the ad apocalypse, my it's not growing like it used to do. Years back,
yeah.
the growth is stagnated. So even though I make more views, I make more videos, I make more, everything is going up. Everything is going up. This is what it looks like with the earnings.
Yeah. Do you
So yeah, don't go in all in like I did unless you're doing really viral videos, because you
right.
won't make it.
Do
I
you have
make
a
it
Patreon?
because yeah, sure.
Yeah. Is that good? Is that like helpful? Is that, I mean, well, yeah, what are you gonna say? Like, no, fuck you, patrons. Um, no, yeah,
No,
it's like,
my God, no.
yeah,
It's super helpful, but it's still not
yeah,
enough. I of course have to do other work, and that's the thing, that the amount of time I put into my videos takes up most of my time.
right,
Whenever I have free time, I look over social networks to see where I can respond to questions and help people out. And that take up so much time that I've been neglecting other things that I wanted to do. So I've been neglecting Patreon, been neglecting Discord, and many times I neglect all DMs across all platforms because I
yeah,
simply don't have time. And
yeah.
then I try to take care of emails, and it's a mess for me because it's every like it's 7 days a week for me that I work with this. It is, and
Emails are
some
such a
days,
whack-a-mole. Oh my God. I'll like finish responding to
yeah.
one and there's two, and then I'll finish responding to those and there's seven. And I'm
The
like, dude, I
problem is
can't.
the problem is that when people want help, if you want help from me, people, if you really want me to answer, because I will not answer you if you ask me, I have this problem, and you tell me nothing else. I will not answer you. You have to tell me exactly what you're using, what you were doing when you were using it, what app you were using, what version of iOS, what version and model of iPad, if you were using a USB 3 to Lightning connector or the old CCK, if you're using a USB-C. You have to be specific. I don't have the time to answer you unless you do, because I can't
Yeah.
do this back and forth conversation, all the time. Sometimes I have time for it on Facebook or Instagram, but that's then and there. And that's when I'm breathing out, when I'm actually relaxing after an 18-hour pass of me sitting editing something. I relax, and when I relax, I respond to someone's issues, because I want to
Yeah.
help. That's why I started the channel. So
Yeah.
sometimes I get really angry emails from someone. You haven't answered me for a long time. And that's simply because that question was so hard to answer because you gave me nothing to go
Yeah.
on. But
No,
my
I mean
patrons,
it.
I love them. I love my patrons, and I wish I could do more. I just haven't had the time. I'm working on it though. Everything I've said I'm going to do, I've done them slowly, introduced them.
Yeah. Right.
I started that whole live streaming channel just for the patrons. They asked me for that, and I started that just for that. It's not even monetized. Everything is free on there. There are no ads, nothing. I make nothing from that.
Yeah. And I feel like entitled people kind of come from every which way. I don't think Patreon is necessarily the harbinger of it. Like, I mean, before I even had a YouTube channel, I would just get messages from people expecting a response because they like listen to my music on Spotify or something. And it was like, well, I've been listening to your music for 2 years and you can't even, help me out with, showing me how you make beats in, a 600 email exchange. Yeah, it's just kind of like there's just people like that and there's like no way around it. Um, so I guess has your YouTube channel and has your work on your YouTube channel, has that led to other gigs in relation to iOS audio or things like that? Like,
Yes,
have you been, yeah, so you've been like working with companies? Because I feel like
yes.
that's like one of the most valuable things is it's funny, I've signed so many NDAs that I can't really like give out too much, but um, yeah, like me having my YouTube channel has legitimately led to me being hired as a scientist, which is just like, wow, it's like unbelievable. I didn't go to college. It's amazing. I can't believe that's like a dream come true. That's just something I always wanted to do, and I just never had the opportunity to do it. And so to be hired for actual research jobs as a result of things I've done in my videos it just made all of YouTube worth it. And now I'm just so into going forward on that path rather than, merely sticking to audio stuff. I really want to do more stuff with physics and stuff like that. And so, but that doesn't get the viewership. Bitching about Behringer gets the viewership. Bitching about Spotify gets the views. Um, you could do something absolutely magical with science and it just doesn't end up on that sidebar for people, unfortunately. But
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. My partner, she's actually a science journalist, and she has that degree, and she actually is a science communicator and has been that for many years. And her job has been to interpret what a scientist says in technical forms and try to get it out into layman terms. And
yeah,
I mean, I know what that means because what's most popular is whoever did this stupid thing at this gala or what they were wearing or something like that. You know what I mean? That's the news, right?
yeah,
The kind of news that you wrote, what always for a smaller community. And what I do on iOS, and that has been a small community and is still a smaller community. But I'm so happy with it because it's really tight knit. It's really tight knit,
right,
and you'll see the same people across channels, viewing each other, we're viewing everybody's videos. It still feels like this family, all right? So
yeah,
I don't know, I'm kind of happy with it because as soon as something, this is my opinion, okay, as soon as something grows and becomes too big, it usually turns into shit. I know that's a blanket statement, but if something is allowed to grow to become too big, it's not going to be good for anyone in the end. That's what I
mm,
think. I've just seen too many examples of it when it comes to anything, really.
yeah.
So, yeah, I kind of like it that we are here in our niche still.
I've thought about that. Yeah, I've thought about that a lot with music. Just that as my career grew and as there was more pressure and just as my schedule got filled up more with like press things or with, you know, um, even like paid gigs outside of performances and things like that. Um, or my God, the amount of lawsuits I've been involved with like music licensing and stuff like people like using my music without permission or things like that. Or even like with I was in a lawsuit with Apple in 2000. Sorry, I'm blanking on what year that was, but 2007, 2007, 2008. I was in a lawsuit with Apple because they just had my music on iTunes and weren't paying me. I never agreed to put it there, and it was just there. Um,
What?
yeah, yeah. It ended up being through a digital distributor that they didn't actually vet for any sort of copyright. They didn't make sure that they had the copyright for anything, and they just sold my music for
Hmm.
years, and I never got a dime. And I contacted them a million times, and obviously, to just put myself through all that, and finally, I just sued them, and then they took down my music and put it back up and paid me for it. Not much for it, but yeah. What was I going to say? But yeah, so it's interesting because as things got bigger and bigger, um, I've noticed at some of my biggest shows, for example, there'd be like, over 1,000 people in the audience, and there'd be like all this pressure. Like everybody's like, all right, we got to have this by 10, we got to have this by 11. Then you go on at 12, you got to be done by 12:45. You might, if you want to do a reprise, it has to be done by 1 a.m. And at that point, we're going to do this and blah, blah. And you have to be on this side of the stage. And then I've never had a sponsor with live. I've never signed a deal, but that gets even crazier. But basically, the more money there is involved, the purity kind of gets drained out of it, and it's harder to find those moments where it actually feels beautiful to make music. um and I've thought in those big shows, even though that was like the dream, more people had shown up to see me perform than I had ever dreamed of when I was younger. However, at that point, I was wishing that I was playing for 5 people in a tiny dingy
Yeah, yeah, I know
bar
what you mean.
somewhere.
You weren't able to
Yeah,
fully immerse yourself and enjoy it because
yeah,
something was lost.
like I wish I could just have that like intimate show where I could just play the guitar and, not have to play the tracks people were familiar with or things like that. It's interesting that the grass is greener, obviously, and that's like the overall argument, but it's interesting how much money and the industry just sucks purity out of the music creation process. And I always want to remind people who want to become professional musicians to really embrace this the situation that they're in now, where they make music on their own time and everything is their own decision, and the consequences are low if they decide to cancel an album and nobody cares. That's actually a pretty awesome thing. Then you have full freedom to be an artist, which is, all art is just
Yeah.
doing something because you want to do it, not because you're being paid or not because of a service, or so yeah.
I know what you mean. I mean, I've hung around a lot of people who are already established or used to be established back in the days or about to be, and
Mhm.
I don't do that anymore. It's because I'm fighting that. You see, I put myself in this position, I put myself in a position where I have to flip every coin I have and think about every purchase I make. I could get more sponsors. I could say yes to more deals. I could make myself more marketable. I get good
Yeah.
tips from people all the time. I refuse to. I've realized that about myself. I refuse to because I'm afraid of losing something of myself in that, or losing my art in that, or appreciation for art or something. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is. I could probably solve a lot of it. But the reason to why I'm so bad at it is because I probably choose to. And I've had a
Yeah.
hard time to accept that, but I'm kind of getting to the place where I'm just accepting it. What else am I
Yeah.
gonna do? Like I either change it or I don't.
There's a lot to be said for knowing when you're happy and stopping there, and just doing what makes you happy, and not always needing more. And that goes back to sort of what I was talking about earlier with the difference between that sort of American everybody believing that they're going to die millionaires and it leading us down this dark hole where, you have poor people voting against their own interests and stuff like that. A lot of people are asking me about my eyebrow. I thought that this was just like household knowledge at this point.
Dude, have
Um,
you ever Googled yourself? Because the first question that comes up when you Google you is Ben Jordan eyebrow.
no, I guess I
People
haven't
try
Googled
it.
myself. That's
Try it,
amazing.
people.
All right, I'm gonna actually open Edge because that's the first time I've opened Edge on this computer, and I won't have
You
any
should fill
cookies.
that in on your Wikipedia or something. I think you had one, right? Something like that. You should fill it in. Type a story about that or something. Get people to, or maybe you should. Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you could make that a patron goal or something. I'll tell you
I'll
about
let you
my
know what
eyebrow.
happened to my eyebrow. It's funny. All right, so it's funny because when I look at my Wikipedia here, oh wow, damn, I have a big Wikipedia. I've not looked at this in a while. Um, okay, there's no controversies. That's good. Um, personal life. All right, so there's some hints here. When I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I was the Golden Gloves champion. I boxed,
Okay.
and then I got into jujitsu, and I got into MMA, and then I had like an early midlife crisis when I turned 30, and I became a pro fighter again, and I took some bouts. But when I was about 19 years old, I got just in boxing, I got punched in the eyebrow, which happens a lot when you're boxing. Is not unusual, but I think the glove just twisted. Sometimes when you're hooking, you'll twist on your way in, and if you don't have enough Vaseline on your face, then it'll cut the skin. And essentially, my eyebrow was just hanging off, and it had to be stitched back on, and the pigmentation never came back. And so that's the story of my eyebrow. If you look, so it's like the special stream where I have like, well, let's see how much I could show, or how much I could do here with a zoom in close. Yeah, you could see the actual, like all the marks where the eyebrow came off. Yeah, there you go. But
Oh.
yeah, it's good times. But yeah, so that's what happened to my eyebrow. It got punched off. um, and it's fine. Um, yeah, so but I probably would say words like a
It's
lot
a
less if I
slugger
didn't get
kiss.
punched
That's
in the
what we
head
call
so
it.
much. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. And now I'm too old to do any of that shit. So now I just ride bikes and stuff. So I am going to get some water and I'm gonna take a momentary break and I'm gonna do a stream just for my patrons. Um, even though my patrons want even though my patrons want my streams to be free for everybody, I do not answer as many questions as I should, and I would really like to just, I don't know, I might play a game. Maybe I'll just play guitar and talk while something like that. And so that link will be on my Patreon, and um, yeah, and so just for those of you who are my patrons, stay tuned because like in 10 minutes after this stream ends, I will come back with another stream where we can talk intimately. We could talk about my eyebrow for an hour if you want. AMA. Um, yeah. Jakob, I want to thank you so much for coming on. You've told me a lot about the iOS environment that I did not know. I've learned a lot about how to plug things in, and I apologize if you start getting emails from me asking for technical support, but I will always let you know that I'm using USB Type C on my iPad Pro 2020, and um, yeah, uh, yeah, and I hope we could do this again.
You're welcome to contact me whenever. Yeah, absolutely. I'm so happy that you chose to have me here on your show. Thank you so much for that, and thank you to Ben's lovely audience. That I haven't been able to see all of your chats and everything, and usually I keep a good eye on it. I guess I'm a bit tired because it's rather late at night here. It's becoming morning now here in Sweden. So yeah, I just want to thank you, and to everyone who comes from my audience and from the iOS music community. I love you, and I'll see you over at my two channels very soon.
Yeah, welcome. Yeah, to all you guys. Thanks for coming by my channel and hanging out in this tavern. So nice to have you. Um, uh, yeah. Well, thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you on Patreon in about 10 minutes after I go pee pee and all that other stuff. So I'll see you soon. Bye. And
Bye.
then sometimes I think I have to. I'm like watching it and it says the stream will end immediately after I click this, and there we go.
I
Okay.
always troll